Hello, and welcome back to what is becoming a bi-weekly glaze session for You and I Are Polar Opposites. You'd think I would get tired of this, or maybe even run out of things to say. And honestly, I did too. Robert Frost told me nothing gold can stay. And yet, week after week, I am absolutely riveted by this sweet little romance. Each new episode is the shortest 23 minutes of my life. I think the most surprising thing about this anime might be that it feels like it's getting better with each episode. In the past couple of weeks, there's been a little arc where the group goes on a school trip. And while the previous episodes have all been fantastic, these recent entries achieve something really special. There is no dead space in these episodes. Every second is laser focused on giving insight to the characters and relationships that define this anime. In the process, You and I Are Polar Opposites finds a way to subvert a tension that feels inherent to the romance genre as a whole. What does this show do to keep its pacing as tight as possible? And how does it keep it from becoming one note without deviating from the romance? Let's start by talking about the genre-wide dynamic that I believe this show is subverting. In my mind, romance anime are built out of two big components. First, you have the romance. Pretty straightforward. This is the relationship between the two main characters, any side relationships, love triangles, really anything surrounding romance. The other big component is what I am going to clumsily refer to as everything else. In rom-coms, that can be the comedy. In a show like Blue Box, that's the myriad of sports storylines. Alia sometimes hides her feelings in Russian, it's the student election. Name a romance anime, and there's plot elements outside of the romance. I think the reasons for this are fairly obvious. Story elements like this provide more tangible plot points to build around, and prevent things from becoming one note. But, as I mentioned earlier, I do think that there's a tension inherent in this balance. For as interesting as the outside story elements can be, it's hard not to feel like they're filler between the romance sometimes. Blue Box is actually a great example. The romance is riveting, so much so that by the time you get towards the back end of the season, the badminton matches can feel like torture. Just let me figure out who likes who. Sorry, if you disagree with this point, I think that's totally valid. But as a whole, I think that finding that balance in a romance anime is really tricky. You and I Are Polar Opposites looked at this structure and said, nah, I'm good. The romance part? Yeah, we're just gonna do that. Plot points that could be foils to the romance, like the culture festival or the class trip, are merely backdrops to the relationship stuff. And it works. But why does it work? Very cleverly, this anime subs out juggling plot and romance for juggling its three core romances. Let's look at the first class trip episode for a good example. We open with Nishi and Honda making class trip guides when Yamada joins them. Of course, we get a very sweet moment where Yamada asks to hang out with Nishi during the class trip. The show then smoothly ties that interaction into a walk home where we pivot to a little awkwardness between Suzuki and Tani. They start to resolve that tension with open communication. Then, before we know it, we bounce to Taira and Azuma walking home. Notably, the opening line for them is referencing Tani and Suzuki. This anime really makes sure to daisy chain its relationships together, which adds to the cohesiveness. Now, we do get a small break from the romance, with Azuma deciding to let go a bit and embrace her friends fully. Spoiler alert though, this will still tie into romance later. On the class trip, we push some of the romances together when Suzuki and Tani run into Nishi and Honda. Finally, Tani and Suzuki share a romantic moment together before bed. In this one episode, there is almost non-stop action on the relationship front. The second episode in this arc is the exact same too. Our reprieve from one romance comes in the form of development in another. There's never any outside goals or motivations that interject into a scene, or take things off the rails altogether. It is all gas, no brakes, and I for one love it. Maybe if every show did this, it would get a bit old, but that's the privilege of being the one to subvert expectations. It just feels fresh and new right now, a delight to watch each and every week. Now, there's one big reason that this structure works for You and I Are Polar Opposites. Each of the 3 relationships is unique and examines different parts of love and romance. This is the key to making sure that bouncing between them feels fun and interesting, and not ever a drag. Tani and Suzuki confess to each other in the first episode, and are figuring out what being in a relationship means. Their scenes are more openly affectionate, and really focus on how you come to understand your loved ones. Tani is really breaking out of his shell recently, feeling comfortable enough to show Suzuki how much he loves her. Then we have Nishi and Yamada, who are dealing with all of the early romantic feelings prior to a confession. We get to see the first spark of romance between them, and how that is growing into love. Their scenes are about bridging the divide, the courage needed to reach out for someone. Nishi's love is fighting her introvertedness, and with Yamada, we get to see how considerate he is of what makes Nishi comfortable. I love how he tones down some of his more boisterous tendencies with her, and how he tries to meet her on her level as much as possible. Finally, Taira and Azuma are our slow burn romance. They are still working through how they see themselves, putting aside worries about how everyone else sees them. We can see how they gravitate towards each other, but neither of them realizes how they feel quite yet. Their scenes are about friendship and self-esteem as much as they are about romance, and I think that this solid foundation is what will make whatever comes next really special. These 3 relationships make up so much of the show, but you can see by how making them all so different, you can jump between them without anything ever feeling samey. You and I Are Polar Opposites has cracked the formula of how you make a romance anime almost exclusively about the romance without it getting old or feeling imbalanced. The key is to have 3 different relationships to juggle, and then make them all so thoughtful and unique that spending time with any of them is awesome. Okay, maybe that's not something you can emulate easily, but there's no denying that for this series, it is a huge part of what makes it so special. It's like the anime equivalent of the Oops All Berries cereal. Oops, all romance. And it's awesome. I am really hoping the rumors of this being a 2-core adaptation are true, because waiting too long after the upcoming season finale would be tragic. And that ends today's episode of Love and Anime. I hope you enjoyed. I really am not running out of good things to say about this show. It's got its sights set on the favorite anime list on my channel banner. If you enjoyed the video today and like video essays about romance, anime, and romance anime, liking and subscribing helps a ton and will keep you in the loop, as does hitting the hype button on the mobile app. I'm Slam Anime, and I'll see you next time.